The door to room 4, West, was already open. Carla Brennan stopped in the hallway, breakfast tray balanced on one forearm, her other hand still reaching for the handle. In 3 years of bringing oatmeal and black coffee to Garrick Tate every morning at 6:15, his door had never been open. Not once. He kept it locked from the inside. She knew because maintenance had complained about it twice, and Devon, the floor administrator, had made a note in his file about patient autonomy and fire code conflicts that were never resolved. She stepped closer. The gap was only 4 inches, but enough to see a sliver of the room. His chair by the window. The edge of his bed. No movement. Her pulse picked up, not from panic, but from the small wrongness of it. She pushed the door with her shoulder, slowly, and the hinges gave a low creak that seemed louder than it should have been. The room smelled like antiseptic, and the faint leather scent of the jacket he kept hanging on the back of his chair, the one with 4 stars on the shoulder boards. Garrick sat in his usual spot, profile to the door, staring out the window at the parking lot below. His hands rested on the arms of the chair. His back was straight. He did not turn when she entered. Carla set the tray on the small table beside him. Steam rose from the coffee. "Morning, mister." He did not answer. That was not unusual. Some mornings he nodded, others he stayed silent until she left. But this morning felt different. His jaw was tight, his breathing shallow, controlled, like someone holding something in. She moved to leave, and his voice stopped her. "Did you lock it?" Carla turned. "Sir." The door. His eyes stayed on the window. "Did you lock it behind you?" It was not a question. His tone was flat, almost empty, but there was a thread of something underneath it. Not fear, not confusion. Something older. "No," she said. "It was already open when I got here." His fingers curled slowly against the armrests, knuckles whitening. He drew a breath in through his nose, held it, let it out. She watched his shoulders settle, the way someone might brace for impact. "Then they are coming," he said. Carla felt the air shift in the room, the way it does before a storm. She glanced at the door, then back at him. Who's coming? He finally turned his head. His eyes were pale gray, the kind that had seen too much and remembered all of it. Deep lines framed his mouth. A scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, old and faded, but still visible in the morning light. He studied her face for a long moment, the way someone might look at a stranger they were trying to place. "You have been kind to me," he said quietly. She did not know what to say to that. In 3 years, he had never once acknowledged the breakfasts. Never said thank you, never asked her name. She had assumed he preferred the distance. "It's just breakfast, Mr. Tate." "No." His voice was firm now, not loud, but weighted. "It is not." Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway, not the soft shuffle of nurses or the quick stride of doctors. These were deliberate, measured, military cadence, multiple sets moving in perfect synchronization. Garrick closed his eyes. His hands relaxed on the armrests. "Go to the door," he said. Carla hesitated. "Mr. Tate, I don't." "Go to the door. Stand there. Do not move." There was no anger in his voice. No command. Just certainty. The kind that comes from someone who has given orders in situations where hesitation meant death. She found herself moving before she decided to, stepping back toward the doorway, her hand brushing the frame. The footsteps grew louder. She could hear them clearly now. At least a dozen sets, all moving as one, the rhythm tight, practiced. A man appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall, mid-60s, with silver hair cut to regulation length. He wore a dress blue uniform. The Marine Corps emblem gleamed on his cover. On his shoulder boards, 3 silver stars caught the fluorescent light. Lieutenant General. Behind him came another man in dress blues. Then another. All in full uniform. All with stars on their shoulders. Kala felt her breath catch. She counted as they came closer. 1 general. 2, 3, 4. They kept coming. Star generals. 3 star generals. She saw the eagles and globes. The rows of ribbons across their chests. Medals she could not name. Service stripes that marked decades of duty. The first man stopped 3 feet from the door. His eyes moved past her, into the room, locking onto Garrick. Something passed across his face. Respect. Something close to grief. Kala turned to look at Garrick. He had not moved. He sat perfectly still, hands on the armrests, staring out the window as though none of this were happening. General. The man in front said. His voice was low, controlled, but it carried the weight of something much larger. He did not look at Kala. None of them did. They stood in formation now, filling the hallway outside room 4, west, silent and waiting. Garrick did not respond. Kala glanced down the corridor. More officers were coming. She counted 4 more generals. Then another 3. Then 2 more. By the time they reached the others, there were 20 of them. 20 Marine generals in dress blue uniforms, standing in formation outside a single hospital room. The nurses at the station down the hall had stopped working. Teslin stood frozen, clipboard in hand, staring. Devon had come out of his office, face pale, one hand gripping the doorframe. The first general took 1 step forward. He did not enter the room. He stopped at the threshold, his hands at his sides, and came to attention. We received word this morning. General. Garrick's eyes stayed on the window. How many? All of them. A long silence followed. Kala could hear her own heartbeat. She did not understand what was happening, but she felt the gravity of it pressing down on the hallway, heavy and inescapable. Garrick finally spoke. His voice was quiet, barely more than a breath. They should not have come. They insisted. General, I told them no. They came anyway, sir. Garrick's jaw tightened. For the first time, Kala saw something crack in his composure, not weakness. Something deeper. The kind of pain that has no remedy. He turned his head toward the doorway. Toward the 20 generals standing in silence. His eyes moved across them, one by one, and Kala saw their faces change. Some lowered their heads. Others held his gaze. One man in the back, a 4-star general with gray hair and a cane, brought his hand to his chest and held it there. Garrick looked at Kala. She stood in the doorway, caught between him and them, not understanding any of it. Move aside, he said. She stepped to the left, her back against the wall. Garrick rose slowly from the chair. His legs were unsteady. She had seen him stand before, but never like this. He gripped the armrest for balance. His other hand braced against the wall. When he straightened, he was taller than she expected, broader in the shoulders. The years had bent him, but they had not broken him. He took 1 step toward the door. Then another. The generals in the hallway did not move. They stood perfectly still, watching him cross the small room. When he reached the threshold, the first general stepped back. Then, as one, all 20 generals came to attention, heels together, backs straight, eyes forward, and then they saluted. 20 right hands rose in perfect unison. 20 generals holding the salute for a man in pajamas and slippers. Garrick stopped. He looked at them, his face unreadable. I am not him anymore, he said. The first general's voice was steady. You will always be the commandant, sir. Kala felt the word land in her chest like a physical blow. Commandant. Not just a general. The highest, ranking officer in the United States Marine Corps. Garrick did not respond. He turned his head, looking back into the room. His eyes found the breakfast tray, the oatmeal, the coffee, the single white napkin folded beside the spoon. He looked at Kala. 3 years, he said. She nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. Every morning. Yes, sir. He held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Not gratitude, not sorrow. Something closer to recognition. As though he had been waiting for this moment and dreading it in equal measure. "You do not know what you did," he said. Before she could ask, he raised his right hand and returned the salute. 20 generals dropped their hands as one. Garrick turned and walked into the hallway. The generals closed in around him. Not touching, not restraining, just present, a formation of protection. The 4-star general with the cane moved to Garrick's right side. A 3-star took his left. The others formed ranks behind them. They moved as one unit down the hallway, past the nurses' station, toward the elevators. Kala stood in the doorway, watching them go. Teslin appeared beside her, breathing fast. "Who is he?" Teslin whispered. Kala shook her head. She had brought breakfast to the former commandant of the Marine Corps for 3 years and never known it. As the elevator doors began to close, the 4-star general glanced back. His eyes met Kala's for just a second, and in that glance, she understood one thing clearly. This was not over. The breakfast tray sat untouched on the table for 3 hours. Kala came back twice to check on it, both times finding the room exactly as Garrick had left it. The chair angled toward the window. The jacket with the 4 stars still hanging on its hook. The coffee cold now, a thin film forming on the surface. She stood in the doorway the second time, listening to the silence, and realized she was waiting for something without knowing what. Margaret Kynes found her there at 9:30. Margaret was the facility director, a woman in her mid-50s who Kala had spoken to perhaps twice in 3 years. She wore a grey suit and reading glasses on a chain. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Miss Brennan." "My office, please." It was not a request. The administrative wing was on the 2nd floor, removed from patient care. Margaret's office had windows that overlooked the parking lot. Kala could see the space where the black vehicles had been parked that morning. 5 of them. Identical SUVs with government plates. They were gone now. Margaret gestured to a chair. Kala sat. Margaret remained standing, arms crossed, looking at her with the kind of focus usually reserved for budget meetings and inspections. "How long have you been bringing breakfast to Mr.? 3 years, since he was admitted. Every day. Every day I work. Monday through Friday." Margaret picked up a thin folder from her desk and opened it. Mr. Tate's file lists him as Gordon Tate. Retired. No occupation specified. No service record on file. No next of kin. No emergency contact. Kala said nothing. The men who came for him this morning. Margaret set the folder down. 20 of them. All in Marine Corps dress blues. All general officers. The head of security counted 4 4-star generals. Do you know what that means? No. There are only 6 4-star generals in the entire Marine Corps at any given time. 4 of them were in this building this morning for a patient listed as Gordon Tate with no service record. Kala kept her hands folded in her lap. "I don't understand what you're asking me." Margaret sat down slowly. Her careful neutrality slipped, just slightly, replaced by something closer to concern. "I am asking if you know who that man actually was." "I know he liked his coffee black. I know he kept his door locked. I know he sat by the window every morning and watched the parking lot. That is not what I mean. It is all I know. Margaret studied her face for a long moment. Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Official government seal. She set it on the desk between them. This was delivered by courier 20 minutes ago. It is addressed to you. Calla stared at the envelope. Her name was typed on the front in formal block letters. Miss Calla Brennan RN. Below that, a single line EYASOLY. Have you opened it? Calla asked. It is a federal offense to open mail marked I's, only that is not addressed to you. Margaret pushed the envelope forward. But I am required to log that it was received and to note that you opened it in the presence of a facility administrator. Calla picked up the envelope. The seal was intact. She broke it carefully and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Official letterhead, Department of Defense. The text was brief. Miss Brennan, General Garrick Tate, has been discharged into protective care under federal authority. His departure from your facility was voluntary and lawful. No further inquiry is required or permitted. Any questions regarding this matter should be directed to the Office of the Commandant, USMC. You are advised that operational security protocols are in effect. Signed, Colonel Marcus Drennan, USMC. Below that, a handwritten addition in different ink. Thank you for your service to the corps. Semper Fi. Calla read it twice, then she folded it and put it back in the envelope. Margaret was watching her. What does it say? That he left voluntarily. That I should not ask questions. That is all. Calla met her eyes. That is all. Margaret took the envelope and placed it in the folder with Garrick's file. The facility is conducting an internal review, standard procedure when a patient leaves against medical advice. You are not in any trouble, but I need you to document every interaction you had with Mr. Tate. Every conversation, every observation, everything. There is not much to document. He rarely spoke. Then document the silence. Margaret stood. Write it up by end of shift. Give it to Devon. He will forward it to me. Calla left the office and went back to the floor. Teslin was waiting at the nurse's station, eyes bright with questions she was too professional to ask in front of patients. What happened? She whispered. I have to write a report. About what? About breakfast. Teslin blinked. Seriously? Seriously? Calla went to the break room and sat with a blank incident form. She stared at the empty lines. Date. Time. Description of event. She wrote, delivered breakfast to room 4, west at 06:15. Patient present. No conversation. Patient departed with visitors at approximately 06:45. No further contact. It was the truth. Just not all of it. She turned in the form to Devon and went back to her rounds. The day moved in its usual rhythm. Vitals, medications, chart updates. At lunch, she sat in the break room and ate a sandwich she had packed that morning. The television was on, volume low. A news anchor was mid-sentence. Former Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Garrick Tate, has not been seen in public since his retirement in 2018. Sources close to the Pentagon confirm that General Tate's current whereabouts are not a matter of public record. Calla's sandwich stopped halfway to her mouth. The screen showed a photograph. Garrick Tate, 20 years younger, in dress blues, 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders. Standing at a podium. The caption read, General Garrick Tate, 31st Commandant of the Marine Corps, 2012-2016. The anchor continued. General Tate is remembered for his leadership during some of the Corps' most challenging operational years, though specific details of his service remain classified. His sudden disappearance from public life in 2018 sparked speculation, but military officials have declined to comment. Today's unconfirmed reports of his appearance at a medical facility have reignited questions about his health and status. Teslin walked into the break room and stopped dead. Is that him? Kala set down her sandwich. Yes, the commandant. You were bringing breakfast to the commandant of the Marine Corps. Former commandant. For 3 years. Yes. Teslin sat down slowly. Did you know? No. How could you not know? Kala thought about the jacket with the 4 stars. The way Garrick held himself. The deliberate cadence of his movements. The controlled precision of everything he did. I thought he was just a veteran, she said. Just a veteran. Teslin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Kala, that man commanded 200,000 Marines. He advised 3 presidents. He is a living legend, and he was sitting in room 4, west eating oatmeal. Kala did not respond. She was thinking about the handwritten line at the bottom of the official letter. Thank you for your service to the corps. She had not served the corps. She had just brought breakfast. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring through to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately. She stepped into the hallway and answered. Miss Brennan. A man's voice, calm, professional. My name is Colonel Drennan. I signed the letter you received this morning. Kala pressed the phone closer to her ear. I need to speak with you. Not on the phone. In person. Are you available after your shift? Why? Because General Tate left something for you, and you need to understand what it means before anyone else asks you about it. Kala felt her pulse quicken. What did he leave? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at 1700 hours? There is a coffee shop 2 blocks west of the hospital, Greystone Cafe. How do I know you are who you say you are? You don't. But if I wanted to hurt you, I would not be calling to set up a meeting in public. A pause. General Tate trusted you. I am asking you to extend that trust 1 step further. The line went dead. Kala stood in the hallway, phone in hand, staring at nothing. Down the corridor, room 4, west was visible. The door was open. A housekeeping cart sat outside. They were cleaning it already, removing all trace of the man who had lived there for 3 years. At 5 o'clock, Kala walked to Greystone Cafe. It was a small place, mostly empty at this hour. A few students with laptops, an elderly couple sharing dessert. She ordered water and sat at a table near the back. Colonel Drennan arrived exactly at 5. He was younger than she expected. Early 40s, trim build, brown hair going grey at the temples. He wore civilian clothes, khakis and a polo shirt, but he moved like military. Controlled. Economical. He sat down across from her without asking permission. Thank you for coming. What did he leave? Kala asked. Drennan pulled a small package from his jacket and set it on the table. Brown paper wrapping. Her name written on the front in the same precise handwriting she had seen on the note. He gave this to me 6 months ago. He said if 20 generals ever came to collect him, I was to deliver it to you within 24 hours. Kala stared at the package. How did he know they would come? He did not. But he prepared for the possibility. Drennan pushed the package toward her. I have not opened it. I do not know what is inside, but I know what he told me to tell you. Which is that what he carried for 50 years is now transferring. That you did not ask for it, and you cannot refuse it. That the chain does not break just because one link wants out. Kala felt something cold settle in her chest. I don't understand. Neither do I. But General Tate was not a man who spoke in metaphors. If he said you are part of a chain, then you are. Whether you want to be or not. Drennan stood. He looked down at her with an expression that might have been sympathy or warning. One more thing. People are going to start asking about him. Reporters. Historians. Maybe people who claim to be from the government. Do not talk to any of them. Do not confirm he was at your facility. Do not confirm you knew him. Say nothing. Why? Because the generals who came for him this morning, they are the ones who still remember. But there are others who want the world to forget. And if they think you know something that could change that, they will not be as polite as I am. He left without another word. Carla sat alone at the table, the package in front of her. She picked it up slowly. It was light, the size of a paperback book. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the weight of it, the strange finality of her name written on the front. She opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal, old. The cover was worn smooth from handling. She opened it to the first page and found an inscription. For those who carry what cannot be set down, Semper Fidelis. Below that, a list of names, 23 of them, handwritten. No ranks, no dates, just names. At the bottom, in slightly darker ink, one more entry. Carla Brennan. The last watch. She turned the page and began to read. The journal had been written over decades. Carla sat at the table in Greystone Cafe and turned the pages slowly, reading entries that spanned from 1972 to 3 weeks ago. Each entry was dated. Each one was written in the same controlled handwriting, though the later entries showed a slight tremor that had not been there in the beginning. The first entry was dated April 18, 1972. Who City. Operation Crimson Tide. 24 went in. We extracted the package. The family did not make it. Colonel Min survived. 23 of us walked out. We made a promise in the helicopter. What we saw stays buried. The intelligence Min carried could have changed everything. Command chose not to use it. We chose not to speak. The next entry was 6 months later. Jenkins died today. Heart attack. Natural. He was the youngest of us. 32. I thought we would all make it to old age before the burdens started claiming us. I was wrong. 22 remain. The chain holds. Carla flipped forward, scanning entries from different years. Each one marked a death. Each one counted down. 1979. Car accident. 21 remain. 1983. Valdez. Cancer. 20 remain. 1901. Kessler. Stroke. 19 remain. Between the death entries were other notes. Shorter. More cryptic. 1985. Congressional inquiry into Phoenix operations. Min's name came up. We maintained silence. Inquiry closed without findings. 1994. Journalist from Post asking questions. Tracked down 3 of us. We gave nothing. She published speculation. No proof. Story died in 2 weeks. 2003. Min died today. Natural causes. He was 81. He never spoke either. The secret dies with us now. 16 of us left to carry it. Carla turned another page and found an entry from 2018. Retired as commandant today. 37 years of service. They wanted me to write a memoir. I declined. Some stories are not meant to be told. Moved to Cedar Heights under assumed name. Gordon Tate will live out his days quietly. Garrick Tate will disappear. 11 of us remain. She turned to the final entries, written in the past year. Drexler is dying. Cancer. He has maybe 3 months. Called me last night. Asked if I thought we did the right thing. I told him yes. I lied. I do not know anymore. 10 remain. A nurse brings me breakfast every morning. She does not know who I am. She does not ask. She just shows up. I find this comforting in a way I cannot explain. 9 remain. The declassification review is moving forward. Congressional Oversight Committee has full authority. If the files are released, the world will learn what we buried. Every death after 1972 will be reframed as preventable. Every mother who lost a son will have a name to blame. We will become the men who let the war continue. The final entry was dated 1 week ago. They are coming. Not enemies, my brothers. The generals I commanded. The men I led. They know the declassification cannot be stopped. They are coming to take me somewhere safe. Somewhere the questions cannot reach. But I cannot leave without passing the chain. Carla Brennan has kept watch without knowing it. Now she must keep it knowingly. This is not fair. But fairness is not part of the equation. The chain does not break. Carla closed the journal and sat in the silence of the cafe. Her hands were cold. She looked out the window at the street, at people walking past, at the ordinary world continuing as though nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She opened the journal again and counted the names on the first page. 23. She counted the death entries. 14 confirmed dead, 9 remain. 9 generals still alive, still carrying the weight of a decision made 52 years ago. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Did you open it? Carla stared at the message. She did not respond. Another text came through. You need to understand something. The journal is not the burden. The knowledge is. A third text. Once you read it, you cannot unread it. You are part of the chain now, whether you want to be or not. Carla typed back. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who used to carry it. Before I was allowed to set it down. How do I contact you? You do not. I contact you when it is time. The messages stopped. Carla put the journal in her bag and left the cafe. The walk back to her car took 5 minutes. She scanned the parking lot before getting in. No black SUVs. No one watching. Just normal evening traffic. She drove home and sat in her apartment with the journal on the kitchen table. She made tea she did not drink and stared at the worn leather cover. The last watch. She thought about Garrick sitting by his window every morning, watching the parking lot, waiting for something he knew would eventually come. He had not been waiting for death. He had been waiting for relief. For the moment when 20 generals would arrive and take him somewhere safe. Somewhere the burden could finally be shared again. And he had given her the journal because she had shown him something he needed to see. That keeping watch did not have to mean being alone. Her phone rang, not a text this time. An actual call. Unknown number, she answered. Miss Brennan. A woman's voice, older, precise. My name is Senator Patricia Vaughan. I chair the Armed Services Committee Oversight Panel. I need to speak with you about General Tate. Carla felt her stomach tighten. I have nothing to say. I understand your reluctance. But you need to understand something. The declassification of Operation Crimson Tide is going forward. The files will be released in 72 hours. When they are, General Tate's role will become public knowledge, along with the roles of 22 other men. I do not know anything about that. You know more than you think? You spent 3 years with him. You were the last person to see him before he disappeared, and I am willing to bet he gave you something before he left. Carla said nothing. Senator Vaughan's voice softened slightly. Miss Brennan, I am not trying to hurt anyone. I am trying to prevent a catastrophe. If those files are released without context, without preparation, the backlash will destroy families, reputations, legacies. But if someone who knew General Tate can speak to his character, to his reasons, it might soften the blow. You want me to defend him. I want you to humanize him. Before the world turns him into a villain. Carla thought about the journal, the entries marking each death, the quiet burden carried for 5 decades. He is not a villain, she said. I know. But the world will not see it that way unless someone helps them understand. I cannot help you. Cannot or will not. Both. Senator Vaughn was quiet for a moment. If you change your mind, call this number. You have 48 hours before the story breaks. After that, it will be too late to control the narrative. The line went dead. Carla sat in her kitchen and thought about narratives, about the way stories were shaped by who told them and why, about the difference between truth and context. The journal told one story, a group of men who made a promise to protect the living from a truth that would only bring more pain. But Senator Vaughn wanted to tell a different story. One where General Tate could be redeemed in the public eye, where his silence could be reframed as noble instead of cowardly. Carla did not know which story was true. Maybe both. Maybe neither. She opened the journal again and turned to a middle entry. 1987. Met with the others today. 8 of us left from the original 23. We talked about going public. About finally telling the truth. Valdez said the families deserved to know. Morrison said the war was over and the secrecy no longer mattered. But Kessler reminded us of the promise. Not to protect ourselves, to protect the meaning of every death that came after. If we speak now, we turn 58,000 graves into a political argument. Unanimous. The silence holds. Carla thought about that. 58,000 graves. 58,000 families who believed their sons and daughters had died for something that mattered. If they learned the war could have ended 2 years earlier, what would that do to their grief? Would it bring closure? Or would it just add rage to the pain? She did not know. But Garrick and the others had decided the question was not theirs to answer. They had chosen to carry the weight themselves, rather than pass it to grieving families who had already carried enough. The last watch was not about keeping a secret. It was about protecting people from a truth they could not change. Carla made a decision. She took out her phone and searched for news about Operation Crimson Tide. Nothing came up. She tried City 1972 extraction. Still nothing. Colonel Men defection Vietnam. One result. A brief mention in a declassified CA document from 1998. Subject Minangayan, former NVA colonel, died of natural causes in protective custody. Intelligence provided during 1972 extraction remains classified. That was all. No details. Just a footnote in a document no one read. Carla searched for Senator Patricia Vaughn. Multiple results. Head of Armed Services Committee, known for pushing transparency in military operations, had led 3 major declassification initiatives in the past decade. She was legitimate. But that did not mean her motives were pure. Carla closed the browser and opened her contacts. She scrolled to Finn's name and called. He answered on the second ring. You okay? I need your help again. What happened? I need you to find out everything you can about a senator named Patricia Vaughn. Specifically, what she has to gain from declassifying a 50-year-old military operation. Finn was quiet for a moment. You are in deeper than you told me. Yes. How deep? Deep enough that a US senator just called me personally. Jesus.
Carla.
She heard typing in the background. Give me 2 hours. He hung up. Carla sat with the journal and waited. She read more entries, learned more names, understood more about the burden these men had carried. At 10 o'clock, Finn called back. Senator Vaughn is running for president. Carla felt the pieces click into place. When does she announce? Officially? Next month. But she has been positioning for 2 years. Her platform is government accountability, transparency, ending the culture of military secrecy, and declassifying Operation Crimson Tide would give her a major story. A massive story. War that could have ended early. generals who kept it secret, thousands of preventable deaths. It is exactly the kind of narrative that gets headlines. Collar thought about Senator Vaughan's voice on the phone. Smooth, practiced, the request to humanize General Tate before the story broke. She does not want to protect him, Collar said. She wants to use him. Probably both. If she can position herself as the person who finally brought the truth to light, while also showing compassion for the men involved, it plays both ways. Accountability and empathy. And I am supposed to be the empathy part. Looks like it. Collar thanked her brother and hung up. She sat in the dark of her apartment and thought about the chain. About how it had passed from 23 men down to 9. About how Garrick had given it to her not because she was qualified, but because she had shown up. Every morning for 3 years. Oatmeal and black coffee. No questions asked. That was all the qualification he needed. Her phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number from before. The senator called you. I know. Do not help her. The chain protects the living, not the legacy. If you speak, you break it. And once it is broken, it cannot be repaired. Collar typed back. Who are you? This time the response was different. Tomorrow, 0800 hours. Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60. Come alone. Arlington National Cemetery opened its gates at 8 in the morning. Collar arrived 15 minutes early and parked in the visitor lot. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that promised rain, but had not yet delivered. She had not slept. The journal sat in her bag, wrapped in a plastic grocery sack to protect it from moisture. She walked through the gates and followed the signs towards Section 60. The newer graves, Iraq, Afghanistan, rows of white headstones stretching across perfectly maintained grass. A woman stood among them. She was in her 60s, tall and angular, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore dark slacks and a windbreaker. No uniform, but she stood like military, shoulders back, weight centered, eyes scanning the approaches. When she saw Collar, she did not wave or smile. She simply waited. Collar walked between the headstones, reading names as she passed. Marine Corporal, Army Sergeant, Navy Petty Officer, young faces on the photo markers. 22, 25, 19. The woman watched her approach. Yes. I am Brigadier General Nora Landron, retired. My father was Major Tobias Landron. You sent him an email 6 days ago. Collar stopped 3 feet away. He died before the email arrived. Had died 3 days before the email arrived. But he had already written his response, because he knew someone would reach out eventually. Nora gestured to a bench near the path. Walk with me. They moved slowly between the graves. Nora's gait was measured, deliberate. She stopped at a headstone near the end of a row. Major Tobias Landron, March 12, 1947 to February 8, 2026. Beloved father, faithful Marine. Collar read the inscription. There was no mention of Operation Crimson Tide, no mention of Hugh City. Just the basics: birth, death, service. My father spent 54 years carrying a secret, Nora said. It consumed him. Not because the secret was terrible, but because the burden of protecting others from it never ended. Every time a journalist called. Every time a researcher asked questions. Every time someone mentioned Hugh City, he had to decide again whether to speak or stay silent. I chose silence. I chose protection. There is a difference. Nora turned to face her. The journal General Tate gave you. How much have you read? All of it. Then you understand what is at stake. Senator Vaughan said the files will be declassified in 48 hours. 46 now. Nora's jaw tightened. The senator is correct. The declassification is going forward. Congressional oversight has full authority. The files will be released. The operation will become public knowledge. Then why am I here? The secret is already coming out. Because there is a difference between releasing files and understanding what they mean. The documents will show that 23 Marines extracted a North Vietnamese defector in 1972. They will show that the defector provided intelligence that could have shortened the war. They will show that the intelligence was not used. That sounds like the full story. It is the facts, but it is not the truth. Nora reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She handed it to Kala. This is what the files will not show. Kala unfolded the paper. It was a photocopy of a handwritten letter dated May 1972. The handwriting was shaky, unpracticed. The signature at the bottom read, Minengayan. She read it slowly. To the Marines who saved my life. You pulled me from the fire. You carried me to safety. You promised my family would be protected. They were not. My wife died. My daughter died. I lived. The intelligence I gave your command could have ended the war. They chose not to use it. I understand why. Politics is complicated. War is complicated. But I want you to know something. If you had left me in Hue City, if you had let me die with my family, I would not blame you. The burden you carry now, the guilt of surviving when they did not, the weight of knowing your mission failed in the ways that mattered most. This is worse than death. Please do not let my survival destroy you. Live your lives. Forgive yourselves. Let me be the one who carries what cannot be shared. Kala refolded the letter carefully. Absolve them. He tried to. But they never accepted it, because the mission was not a failure of execution. It was a failure of purpose. They did everything right. They extracted the package. They got him out alive. But command decided the intelligence was too politically sensitive. Using it would have required admitting we had been in communication with high-level NVA officers. It would have exposed covert operations. It would have complicated peace negotiations. So they buried it. They buried it. And 58,000 more Americans died, millions more Vietnamese. The war dragged on for 3 more years, and 23 Marines spent the rest of their lives knowing it did not have to happen that way. Kala thought about the journal entries, the careful count of deaths, the way each entry marked not just a loss, but a reduction in the number of people who remembered. Senator Vaughn wants to use this for her campaign, Kala said. Of course she does. A story about military cover. About generals who stayed silent while the war continued. About transparency and accountability. It is perfect for her platform. Nora's voice hardened, and she will destroy 9 men in the process. The 9 who are still alive. Yes. Major General Vickers, Lieutenant General Hawthorne, Brigadier General Sen, 6 others, all in their 70s and 80s, all living quiet lives. All about to be named as the men who let the war continue. Kala felt the weight of it settle over her. What does Senator Vaughn want from me? She wants you to go on record, to talk about General Tate, to humanize him before the story breaks. She thinks if the public sees him as a man who cared, who struggled with the decision, it will soften the backlash. Will it? No. Because the public does not want nuance. They want villains, and 9 old men who kept a secret for 50 years are easy villains. Kala looked at the headstone again. Tobias Landron. Beloved father, faithful Marine, what are you asking me to do? Nora met her eyes. I am asking you to break the chain. The words hung in the air between them. Your father's letter said to protect the chain, to let the secret die. My father wrote that letter when he thought the declassification could still be stopped. It cannot. The files are being released. The story is coming out. The only question now is how much damage it does. And breaking the chain does what? It gives the families answers. It lets the world understand why these men stayed silent. It reframes the story from cover up to sacrifice. Nora's voice softened, but it also means the 9 men still alive will face the full weight of public judgment. They will be questioned, investigated, blamed. Some of them will not survive it. Kala understood now. This was the fracture point, the moment where choosing right caused permanent loss. If she stayed silent, the declassification would proceed without context. The 9 generals would be vilified. Their families would suffer. The story would be incomplete. But if she spoke, if she shared what the journal contained, if she gave Senator Vaughan the humanizing narrative she wanted, those same 9 men would still be exposed, still blamed, still destroyed. Either way, they lost. The only difference was whether their destruction served a political campaign or stood alone as a tragedy without purpose. There is a third option, Collar said. Which is, I give the journal to the families, not to Senator Vaughan, not to the press, to the families of the 58,000 who died after 1972. Let them decide what it means. Nora shook her head slowly. That is not mercy. That is cruelty. You would be giving grieving families proof that their sons and daughters died unnecessarily. That generals knew the war could have ended and chose silence. What do you think they will do with that information? Demand accountability. Demand vengeance. And the 9 men still alive will be the only ones left to punish. Command is dead. The politicians who made the decision are dead. But Vickers and Hawthorne and Sen are alive, and they will become the face of every preventable death. Kala felt something crack inside her chest. There was no good choice. Every path led to destruction. What did your father want? She asked. He wanted the truth to stay buried, but he also knew it would not. That is why he wrote the response before he died. He was preparing for this moment, when someone like you would have to decide what to do with what he carried. And what did he think I should do? Nora reached into her jacket again and pulled out another envelope. He left this for you. Read it, then decide. Kala took the envelope. It was sealed, her name written on the front in the same shaky handwriting as the letter from Minungayan. She opened it. The letter inside was short. Miss Brennan, by the time you read this, you will have been given impossible choices. Break the chain or protect it. Speak or stay silent. Expose the truth or guard the living. I cannot tell you which choice is right, but I can tell you what I learned in 54 years of carrying this burden. The truth does not set people free. It just gives them something new to carry. And some truths are too heavy for the living to bear. If you choose to speak, do it for the right reasons. Not to serve a politician, not to claim transparency, but because you believe the families deserve to know, regardless of what it costs them. And if you choose silence, do it knowing that you are protecting people who never asked for protection, who might not want it, who might hate you for making that choice on their behalf. Either way, you will carry what you decide for the rest of your life. That is the chain. It does not end. It just transfers. I am sorry, Tobias Landron. Kala folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. She looked at Nora. The 9 generals. Do they know the declassification is happening? Yes. What do they want? They want to disappear, the way General Tate did. Go somewhere the questions cannot reach them. Live out their final years in peace. Can they? If you stay silent, if you do not give Senator Vaughan the story she wants, if you let the declassification happen without context, without humanization. The story will be a footnote, bureaucratic files, dry facts. It will get one news cycle and then fade. But if you speak, if you make it personal, if you turn General Tate into a sympathetic figure, the story becomes national, and those 9 men lose any chance of disappearing. Calla thought about Garrick sitting by his window. 3 years of silence, 3 years of waiting for the moment when he could finally let go. He had given her the journal because she had kept him company without demanding anything in return, because she had shown up every morning with oatmeal and black coffee and never asked why he needed it. He had trusted her to understand what the burden meant, not to fix it, not to expose it, just to carry it long enough for the others to finish dying in peace. "I am not going to help Senator Vaughan," Calla said. Nora's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you. But I am also not going to lie. If reporters ask me about General Tate, I will tell them he was a good man who ate oatmeal and kept to himself. I will not confirm the operation. I will not deny it. I will just tell them the truth about who he was in room 4, West. That is all we can ask." Calla handed back the envelope. "Your father was right. The truth does not set people free. It just gives them something new to carry." "Yes. And now I am carrying it." "Yes." Calla looked out across the rows of white headstones. Section 60, the newest graves, the most recent wars, young men and women who had died believing it mattered. What if they ask me if I think the war could have ended earlier? Tell them you are a nurse, not a historian, not a general. Tell them you cannot answer questions you are not qualified to answer. And if they push, let them push. You do not owe them anything." Calla nodded slowly. She understood now. The last watch was not about keeping a secret. It was about refusing to let that secret be weaponized by politicians, by journalists, by anyone who wanted to use 58,000 graves as proof of their righteousness. The chain protected the dead by refusing to make their sacrifice a political argument. And now she was part of that protection. "The 9 generals," Calla said. "Where are they going?" "I cannot tell you that." "Will I ever see General Tate again?" "No." Calla felt the loss of it settle in her chest. 3 years of mournings. 3 years of a ritual that had meant nothing to her and everything to him. And now it was over. No closure, no goodbye. Just an empty room and a journal she had not asked for. "One more thing," Nora said. "The journal." "Burn it." Calla looked down at her bag. "Why?" "Because as long as it exists, someone will try to take it from you, and you cannot protect it forever. Your father wanted me to guard it. I wanted you to guard the chain. The journal is just paper. The chain is the choice to protect the living. You can do that without keeping evidence." Calla thought about the entries, the names, the careful record of 5 decades of silence. If I burn it, there is no proof the chain ever existed. Exactly. And without proof, the story stays theoretical, files and speculation, but no human face, no narrative, just bureaucratic history that no one cares about. Calla understood. This was the permanent loss, not just refusing to help Senator Vaughan, but destroying the only evidence that General Tate and the others had struggled with their choice, that they had carried it with honor and pain in equal measure. If she burned the journal, their sacrifice would disappear into classified files and forgotten history. But if she kept it, she would spend the rest of her life protecting it from people who wanted to use it for purposes that had nothing to do with honoring the men who had carried it. She made her choice. "I will burn it tonight." Nora nodded. "Thank you." They walked back toward the entrance in silence. When they reached the parking lot, Nora stopped and turned to face her. "You gave General Tate something he had not had in decades. Breakfast. Company. Without judgment. He told me that in his final message, that you never asked who he was or what he had done. You just showed up. It was just breakfast." "No," Nora said quietly. "It was witness. To the man he was at the end. Not the commandant. Not the general. Not the keeper of secrets. Just an old man who liked his coffee black." Nora extended her hand. Carla shook it. "The chain holds," Nora said. "The chain holds," Carla repeated. She drove home and sat in her apartment with the journal one last time. She read every entry again. Every name, every death. Every moment when the burden had grown heavier and the number of people carrying it had grown smaller. Then she took it to her fireplace and struck a match. The pages burned slowly. Leather curled and blackened. Ink turned to ash. Within 20 minutes, there was nothing left but smoke and fragments too small to read. She swept the ashes into a bag and took them outside to the dumpster. When she came back inside, her phone was ringing. Senator Vaughan. Carla let it go to voicemail. The senator called 3 more times that day. Carla did not answer. The next morning, the declassification was announced. Operation Crimson Tide. Hugh City extraction. Intelligence that was never used. The news cycle lasted exactly 1 day. By the following morning, the story was buried under newer headlines. Presidential primaries. Economic data. A celebrity scandal. The 9 generals disappeared quietly. No interviews, no statements, just silence. And Carla Brennan went back to work, bringing breakfast to the new patient in room 4, West, carrying a burden no one else could see. The news story died, but the questions did not. 3 days after the declassification, a reporter from the Washington Post published a follow-up piece. It focused on one name from the roster. Major General Raymond Vickers. Retired, living in a small town outside Charlottesville, Virginia. The article included his address. Carla saw it on her lunch break, scrolling through news on her phone in the hospital cafeteria. The headline read, "Last surviving officer of controversial Vietnam. Op breaks silence." She clicked the link. The article quoted an interview conducted the previous day. General Vickers, age 79, had answered his door when the reporter knocked. He had confirmed his presence at the Hugh City extraction. He had confirmed the intelligence was provided to command. He had confirmed it was not used. And then he had said something the other 8 had never said. "We should have gone public in 1973. The moment the war ended, we should have told the truth. But we were young. We were following orders. We believed silence was loyalty. I do not believe that anymore." The article went on to describe Vickers as frail but clear-headed, living alone in a modest house, estranged from his daughter. No contact with the other members of his unit. The final paragraph was the problem. General Vickers expressed willingness to testify before Congress if called. He stated that the American people deserved to know why the war continued when it could have ended. When asked if he had spoken to the other surviving members of the operation, he declined to comment. Carla set down her phone. Vickers had broken ranks. Whether intentionally or because he was tired of carrying it, he had spoken, and now he had painted a target on himself and potentially on the others. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "Did you see it?" Nora's voice. Tight. Controlled anger barely held in check. "Yes." Vickers was not supposed to talk. He agreed to stay silent. He gave his word. Maybe he changed his mind. He is 79 years old with early dementia. That reporter ambushed him at his home. He did not know what he was agreeing to. Carla felt something cold settle in her chest. Is he in danger? He is alone. No family nearby, no protection, and every journalist in the country now knows where he lives. Nora paused. The sound of voices in the background muffled conversation. The other 8 are secure. We got them out before the declassification, but Vickers refused to leave. He said he was done running. What do you need from me? Senator Vaughan is calling a hearing. She is using Vickers' statement to justify a full congressional investigation. She wants all 9 generals to testify. Publicly, under oath. Kala stood and walked out of the cafeteria, finding an empty hallway. Can they refuse? They can. But if they do, it looks like they have something to hide, and the press will crucify them. Nora's voice dropped. We need you to make a statement. What kind of statement? Something that contradicts Vickers. Something that shows the generals were not covering up wrongdoing, but protecting families from painful truth. You knew General Tate. You can speak to his character. You can reframe the narrative before the hearing. Kala thought about the burned journal. The ashes in the dumpster. The promise she had made to protect the chain. I told you I would not help Senator Vaughan. That includes not helping you use me to fight her. This is not about politics. This is about protecting 8 men from being destroyed because one of them broke. Vickers has dementia. He did not break. He was broken. Then help us fix it. Kala closed her eyes. She could see the choice clearly now. The fracture point. If she spoke, if she gave a statement defending the generals, she would be breaking her own promise to stay out of it. She would be taking sides, making the story personal, giving it the human face that Nora had warned against. But if she stayed silent, Vickers would stand alone, an old man with dementia facing congressional hearings and national scrutiny. And the other 8 would be pulled into it anyway, because Senator Vaughan would not stop until she had her full investigation. Either way, someone was destroyed. The only question was whether she would be part of it. I cannot help you, Kala said. Cannot or will not. Both, Kala, please. These men gave their lives to the corpse. They do not deserve to die like this. Then get them better protection. Move Vickers somewhere safe. Issue a statement through proper channels. But do not ask me to become the face of this fight. Nora was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. General Tate trusted you. He trusted me to keep showing up. That is all. He did not trust me to save him. You are right. He trusted you to protect the chain. And right now, the chain is breaking. Vickers is the weak link. If he testifies, he will name the others. If the others are named, they will be forced to testify. And if they testify, everything comes out. Every decision. Every compromise. Every moment of doubt over 50 years. Is that what you want? What I want does not matter. It is the only thing that matters. You are the last watch now. That means you decide what gets protected and what gets exposed. Kala felt the weight of it pressing down. The last watch. She had thought it meant carrying the journal until the others died. But it meant more than that. It meant being the one who made the choices when the burden became too heavy for anyone else to carry. What happens to Vickers if I stay silent? Kala asked. He testifies. Senator Vaughan uses him to prove the cover-up. The media tears him apart. He will not survive it. Not in his condition. And if I speak, you give the other 8 a chance. You reframe the story. You show that silence was sacrifice, not guilt. Vickers still testifies, but the context changes. He becomes a tragic figure instead of a whistleblower. And the 8. They get to disappear. The way they were supposed to? Kala thought about Garrick by the window. 3 years of silence. 3 years of waiting. He had given her the journal not because he thought she could save the others, but because he trusted her to understand when saving them was no longer possible. "I am sorry," Carla said, "but I cannot do what you are asking." "Then you are sentencing him to die alone." "He made his choice when he spoke to that reporter. I cannot unmake it for him." The line went dead. Carla stood in the empty hallway and felt the irreversible nature of what she had just done. She had chosen to protect 8 men by sacrificing one. She had chosen the chain over the individual link, and now Vickers would face the consequences alone. That night, she sat in her apartment and watched the news. Senator Vaughan had scheduled the hearing for the following week. General Vickers would be the first witness. Legal experts debated whether he could be compelled to name the others. Constitutional scholars argued about executive privilege and national security. No one talked about the man himself, his age, his condition, the fact that he was being used as a political tool by people who did not care whether he survived the process. Carla's phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. 7 calls in an hour. Reporters, producers, someone claiming to be from the Department of Defense. She turned off her phone. The next morning, she went to work. Room 4 West had a new patient. A woman this time, 72, hip replacement. She liked her coffee with cream and sugar. She talked about her grandchildren. She asked Carla about her life. Carla answered politely and moved on to the next room. At lunch, Teslin found her in the break room. "Have you seen the news?" Carla shook her head. "General Vickers had a stroke last night. They found him this morning. He is in intensive care." Carla set down her sandwich. "Is he going to survive?" "They do not know, but even if he does, he will not be able to testify." Carla felt something twist in her chest. Relief and guilt in equal measure. Vickers would not have to face the hearing, but he had paid for his moment of honesty with his health. "Was anyone with him?" Carla asked. The news said he was alone. A neighbor found him when his newspaper piled up. Alone. The word echoed in Carla's mind. An old man with dementia, facing the consequences of a choice he might not have fully understood. Dying alone, because everyone else had disappeared to protect themselves. And she had let it happen. Her phone buzzed. She had turned it back on that morning. A text from Nora. "You were right. We could not save him. But the others are safe. The chain holds." Carla stared at the message. The chain holds. 8 men protected, 1 man lost. She thought about Tobias Landron's letter. The truth does not set people free. It just gives them something new to carry. She was carrying Vickers now. The weight of a choice she had made to protect the many by abandoning the one. She deleted the text and went back to work. That afternoon, Senator Vaughan held a press conference. She announced that the congressional hearing would proceed as planned, but the focus would shift from individual testimony to systemic failures. She spoke about accountability and transparency. She did not mention Vickers by name. The story cycled out of the news within 48 hours. 3 days later, Carla received a package at work. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed an old man in a hospital bed. Machines, tubes, eyes closed. But beside the bed, standing in formation, were 8 men in civilian clothes, older, gray-haired, but standing straight. The 8 generals, they had not abandoned Vickers. They had gone to him. Risked exposure to stand watch while he died. On the back of the photograph, written in careful script, "The chain does not break. It bends. But it does not break." Carla put the photograph in her locker and finished her shift. Vickers died 2 days later. Natural causes. The obituary listed him as a decorated Marine who had served with distinction in Vietnam. There was no mention of Operation Crimson Tide, no mention of the extraction, no mention of the intelligence that was never used. Just a Marine who had served, and died, and been remembered by brothers who had stood watch until the end. Kala understood then what the last watch truly meant. It was not about keeping secrets. It was not about protecting reputations. It was about making sure no one died alone. That when the burden became too heavy, someone was there to share it. Garrick had given her the journal, not because he needed her to guard information. He needed her to understand that the chain was made of people, not secrets, and people needed witness, even in silence. Especially in silence. She had failed Vickers by staying quiet, but the 8 generals had succeeded by showing up. The chain held, not because the secret stayed buried, but because when it mattered most, the men who carried it refused to let one of their own face the end alone. And that, Kala realized, was what she had been doing for Garrick all along. Not guarding secrets, just being present, bearing witness, showing up with oatmeal and coffee, and asking nothing in return. The last watch was not a burden. It was companionship in the face of isolation. And now she understood what Garrick had been trying to teach her. General Raymond Vickers was buried on a Tuesday in the rain. Kala did not attend the funeral. She saw it on the news that evening. Footage of Arlington National Cemetery, a flag-draped coffin, 8 old men in dark suits standing at attention as taps played across the wet grass. The 8 generals, present. Visible, no longer hiding. The news anchor called it remarkable. Senator Vaughan appeared on 3 networks that night, calling the funeral a powerful moment of accountability. She announced that the congressional hearing would not proceed. The story disappeared from the news cycle within a week. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Kala's apartment. Hand-delivered. No postage. Nora Landron's handwriting. Miss Brennan, my father, kept a second record. Not of the extraction, but of what came after. 8,000 American families tracked for 40 years. Mothers who never recovered. Fathers who died of broken hearts. He documented the cost of silence. That record was supposed to be passed to you with the journal, but General Tate destroyed it the night before the generals came. He made a choice to protect you from carrying what had destroyed most of the others. 14 of the original 23 died before their time. Heart attacks, strokes, suicides never labeled as such. The 8 who remain are only alive because they learned to share the weight. You burned the journal thinking you were protecting them from exposure. What you actually did was free them from the need to prove their sacrifice. My father would have approved. Thank you, Nora Landron. Kala read it twice, then put it in the box with the photograph. A record of 58,000 families. Destroyed to spare her. She had thought burning the journal was her choice, but Garrick had already decided what she would carry and what she would be spared. Her phone rang 2 days later. Unknown number, Miss Brennan. A man's voice. Old, rough with illness. My name is Major General Robert Hawthorne.
I was there.
Hugh City? Kala sat down. Yes, General. I am calling because you need to know something. The record Garrick destroyed only tracked American families. There were others, Vietnamese civilians. Hundreds of thousands. We tracked those too. Burned all of it in 1995, because recording the pain did not reduce it. He coughed a wet, rattling sound. I am dying. Cancer. 3 weeks maybe. And I want you to know what you did was right. Burning that journal, staying silent, you protected something more important than truth. What? Dignity. The dignity of men who made an impossible choice. The dignity of families who mourned without knowing their sons died unnecessarily. The dignity of silence when speech would only multiply pain. But the families deserved to know. Did they? Would it have helped a mother to learn her son died 2 years after the war could have ended? Or would it just have given her someone to hate while the grief stayed exactly the same? Kala had no answer. We did not know either. That is the burden, not the secret. The not knowing if we should have spoken. We carried that uncertainty every day. Someone spoke to him in the background, a nurse telling him to rest. One more thing. The 8 of us are going public. We are not hiding anymore. We are releasing a statement, confirming the operation, making ourselves available to anyone who has questions. Vickers understood. He was tired of hiding from what we did. We are standing with the consequences now. The families will destroy you, probably. But we will be there to be destroyed. Together. The line went dead. Kala sat with the phone in her hand. She thought about chains and choices, about how Garrick had chosen invisibility, while the 8 were choosing something else entirely. Both were ways of standing watch. She pulled out her phone and opened her email. She found the address for the Washington Post reporter who had written about Vickers. My name is Kala Brennan. I was the nurse who brought breakfast to General Garrick Tate for 3 years. I am willing to speak on the record about who he was in those final years. Not about the operation, just about the man. She hit send. The interview was published 3 days later, 6 paragraphs, Kala describing morning breakfast, black coffee, silence, the way he sat by the window. The article ended with her quote, "He was not a general in that room. He was just a man who carried something heavy and did not burden anyone else with it. That is all I know." The response was immediate. Emails, calls, interview requests from families, historians, veterans. Kala answered none of them. She had said what she needed to say. 2 weeks later, the 8 generals released their statement. Major General Hawthorne read it at a press conference, sitting in a wheelchair, oxygen tube in his nose. He confirmed the operation, confirmed the intelligence, confirmed the choice. We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not offer justification. We made a choice that allowed a war to continue when it might have ended. If you are the family of someone who died after 1972, you have the right to be angry. We are here. We will answer. We will not hide anymore. The backlash was immediate. Families demanded hearings. Veterans groups called for courts martial. But the 8 generals did not retreat. They appeared on morning shows. They sat for interviews. They attended memorial services. At every event, they stood together. 3 weeks later, Major General Hawthorne died. Kala attended the funeral. She stood at the back, watching 7 old men in dress blues salute a flag-draped coffin. Watching them stand together in the rain, shoulders straight despite everything. After the burial, one of them approached her. Lieutenant General Marcus Sen, 81, walking with a cane. Thank you for coming. I did not know him. You knew what he carried. They stood in silence, watching the crowd disperse. Sen reached into his jacket. Garrick left you something. One more thing. We were supposed to give it to you when the last of us died, but I think you should have it now. He handed her a small envelope. Sealed. Instructions were clear. Last of the 8 dies, or when you are ready. Whichever comes first. He walked away. Kala opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Garrick Tate, 40 years younger, in combat fatigues, standing in front of a helicopter. Beside him, a small girl, 6 years old. Dark hair. Holding his hand on the back, Garrick's precise script, Mira Rangayan, Min's daughter, the one who lived. She does not remember me, but I remember her. Every morning when I watched that parking lot, I was not waiting for the generals. I was waiting to see if she would come. To see if she understood. She never did. But you did. Thank you for showing me that witness does not require understanding, just presence. Pass it forward when you can. Garrick Tate. Calla stood in the rain, holding the photograph. Around her, the cemetery was emptying. The 7 generals walked together toward the parking lot, moving slowly, supporting each other. She looked down at the image, a young Marine and a child. One moment, one life saved, everything else lost. She folded the photograph carefully and put it in her pocket. The rain continued to fall. Calla went back to work the next morning. The hospital looked the same hallways, the same fluorescent lights humming overhead, the same nurses at the station reviewing charts. Teslin waved when she saw her. Devon nodded from his office. Everything exactly as it had been, except room 4. West had a new patient. His name was Bernard Cross, 76. Chronic heart failure. He had a son in Denver who called twice a week. He liked his coffee with 1 sugar. He talked about his years as a postal carrier, about his late wife, about the garden he used to keep. He was nothing like Garrick Tate. Calla brought him breakfast on her first morning back. Oatmeal and coffee. She set the tray on the table beside his bed. "Anything else you need, Mr. Cross?" He smiled. "No, thank you. This is perfect." She turned to leave. "Miss Brennan." She stopped at the door. "I appreciate this. I know dietary handles the trays. You did not have to bring it yourself." Calla looked at him, an old man in a hospital bed, grateful for small kindnesses. "It is no trouble," she said. She closed the door gently and went about her rounds. The morning moved in its familiar rhythm. Vitals, medications, chart updates. At lunch, she sat in the break room with Teslin and ate a sandwich she had packed that morning. They talked about weekend plans, about a new restaurant downtown, about nothing that mattered and everything that made the days bearable. That afternoon, she stopped by room 4, West, to collect the breakfast tray. Bernard was asleep in his chair, a book open on his lap. She picked up the tray quietly and carried it to the cart. The room felt different now, lighter somehow. She thought about the photograph in her pocket. Still there. Garrick and Mira. One moment captured. Everything that came after left to silence. At the end of her shift, she walked to her car. The parking lot was half empty. She sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The last of us will be gone soon. Maybe 5 years. Maybe less. When we are, the story dies with us. Thank you for letting it. Sen." Calla read it twice, then deleted it. She drove home and made dinner. Pasta with vegetables. A glass of water. She ate at her kitchen table and watched the sky darken through her window. Later that night, she took out the photograph and looked at it one more time. Garrick young and strong, Mira small and frightened, his hand holding hers. She put the photograph back in the box with Nora's letter, closed the lid, set it on the shelf in her closet. The next morning, she arrived at the hospital at 6. The hallways were quiet, early shift. She picked up the breakfast tray from the cart and walked toward 4 West. Bernard Cross was already awake, sitting in his chair by the window, looking out at the parking lot. She knocked once and went in. "Thank you for listening."